Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today, in honor of Jon Walmsley's birthday, I thought I would share some additional information about Jon and his life, and in particular about his music. From some different resources, I found some fun articles. This one is from Dick Kleiner, and it was in the Press Courier, October 27th of 1974, which would have made Jon about 18. And in this, it's Walton's portrayal concerns Walmsley. So it's only natural that Jon Walmsley is concerned about what's to become of Jason Walton. Jon plays Jason, the second oldest Walton boy. The way that show is going, it looks like he'll be playing him for many years. There's only one thing that bothers me about the Waltons, Jon Walmsley says, and that is that they never tell us actors what's coming. I have no idea what's to become of Jason Walton. I've talked to some writers, and we think it'd be a good idea if he didn't go to college. He's interested in a musical career, and he'd probably feel that college was not needed for his future. Jon knows how Jason would think and feel because Jon is a lot like Jason. He's very interested in music, and at 18 has decided that college is unnecessary in his development. I'm not going to college, he says. I want to continue acting and get more into music. At the fast census, Jon Walmsley played the piano, guitar, mandolin, flute, drums, cello, harmonica, banjo, plus singing and writing music. It all began when he was young and picked up the guitar. Then he added the banjo, the harmonica. He learned the flute and cello in school and took piano lessons. Now he spends most of his money on fancy recording equipment. Jon was born in Blackburn, England, the only child of a successful grocer. When the boy was 2, the family moved from Lancashire to California. I think Jon says that they moved because of me. They felt that California was a healthier climate than grimy northern England. Another fun article was by Vernon Scott, and it was published via Hollywood United Press International also in 1974. So these are some early looks into Jon's life at about the age of 18 and prior to that. And this one says Jason Walton, real musician. Jon Walmsley plays Jason, second eldest of the Walton television family and the only real musician of the lot. Jon is a serious-minded 18-year-old who lives with his parents in the San Fernando Valley in a modest home. He is an only child born in Lancashire, England, but reared in California. His jargon is pure American teenager, but his parents have an unmistakable English accent, which his friends find diverting. The youthful actor has converted one of the 3 bedrooms in the family house into a music room, brimming with stereo equipment, speakers, guitars, piano, organ, and microphones, not to mention drums. When all systems are go and the volume is running full, Jon's parents are ready to move out. So is the family dog, a Yorkshire Terrier named Tudor. Jon was graduated from high school last year via the Warner Brothers studio tutoring system, where all the other minor children in the series attend class every working day of the year. It's a big day when a child performer no longer has to duck out of a scene and into geography classes. Mrs. Walmsley is up every morning to fix breakfast for her husband and working son. Jon reports to the set at 8 o'clock and works through the day until 6 o'clock, having lunch in the studio commissary between 1 and 2 p.m., usually with one of the other cast members. Now, we didn't have set hours like 8 to 6. It kind of depended on what scenes you were in. Now, if we didn't have any scenes that day, then we would usually show up at 9 o'clock just to do our school time. But you could be anywhere from 6:30 in the morning as your call time to later in the day, 9 o'clock being the latest if you also had school. Probably roughly ran 8 to 6, but not necessarily. He is home in time for dinner with his parents, driving a brand new Mercedes, which is his pride and joy. Jon looks 4 or 5 years younger than he is, which is both a blessing and a burden. When he wants to dine well, he stays at home for his mother's steak and kidney pie, a culinary delight straight from her home in England. She's also expert at American dishes. Jon is not addicted to hamburgers, French fries, and malts, as are many of his contemporaries. He is conscious of his health and sticks with more nourishing meals. He also does calisthenics every morning to keep him fit. Several times during the year, the family takes a long weekend by loading their camper with fishing gear and heading for nearby mountain streams in search of trout. On most Saturdays and Sundays, however, Jon can be found in his music room practicing piano, guitar, and organ, or composing music on all 3 instruments. He has performed several of his own compositions for the CBS TV series. He favors country, western, and rock and roll songs. So how accurate all of this is, I'll have to check back with Jon. I do know he does eat very healthy now. I don't recall how long that has been the case. He's been a vegetarian for quite a number of years. I frankly don't remember what we all ate when we were young. Most of us ate hamburgers and fries and pizza and, things like that. But Jon might have been better about it even then. On IMDb, which is the Internet Movie Database, it notes various different artists that he's worked with as a musician, including Richard Marx, Brian Setzer, David Pack, David Cause, the Doobie Brothers, Michael McDonald, Greg Allman, Merle Haggard, Roy Acuff, Lawrence Juber, John Mayall, Denny Lane, Spencer Davis, Peter and Gordon, Jackie Lomax, Roger Daltrey, the Beach Boys, Al Jardine, and David Marks, Dean Torrance of Jan and Dean, and Strawberry Alarm Clock. Over the years, particularly during the series, many of us participated in various different telethons to raise donations for various worthy causes. And on one of Cammie's blogs, she shared a couple of great photos of Jon performing on the Green Bay United Cerebral Palsy telethon somewhere around 1975-76. And as you see from the photos, not only would we sometimes perform, but we'd also answer phones and take donations from callers. And Cammie said that even when she was very young, they allowed her to answer the phones. There's also a few clips on YouTube. There's one of Jon and his former wife, Lisa Harrison, performing a rock song, Loving You, on the 1979 Jerry Lewis Muscular Dystrophy Association telethon. Also some fun facts about Jon from a Waltons podcast, December 5th of 2023, which was an interview with Jon Walmsley, which is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And it was an hour-long segment, and so just pulled a few of the various different questions. One of them being, Jon said, I wanted to play music, particularly guitar, for a long time. At that point, I was 8 in 1964, and I wanted to start early. My mother had taken me to the local music store, but my hands were too small, and they said, why don't you come back in a year? During that time, the Beatles appeared, and the next month, I started guitar lessons. I remember the date. It was March 21st, 1964. And Jon shared some of this with the 3-part segment I did with him a couple of years ago. So you can also look back at those segments on my YouTube channel to see some of the things that Jon answered and talked about relative to his music background. The podcast continues with, when asked if when starting in acting television, if he veered away from his love of music, he responded, no, not at all. And I would always take my guitar to the set with me. I auditioned on guitar for the Disney musical I did. It was called The One and Only Genuine Original Family Band. And although I didn't play guitar in the film, it was the musical ability that got me into it. And then summarizing some of what Jon had to say about his path into music. This is not exactly quoted. I started doing music in school when music was offered, when orchestra and band were offered in school. I went that route. I learned to play the cello, and so I was playing classical music at school and playing in orchestra and string quartets and things like that, a tremendous amount. And in high school, I played the flute and marching band. I learned a lot about music in school, and I was very serious about being a cellist, because I had some music teachers that I really admired, and I thought, well, that would be good. That would be a good life. And, acting is sort of a risky feast or famine kind of profession. So I thought I'd opt for going to a conservatory and studying classical music and being a music teacher, maybe in schools. That's what I had in mind. I was working very hard on the cello, a full-time thing. And then along came the Waltons. And suddenly at 16, I had a full-time job. Not only a full-time job, but other things to do on the weekend. Flying out to do personal appearances, meetings for the network, things like that, and I've talked about those junkets where we would go and we would do promotional pieces for all of the various different local CBS affiliates. And I did one with Jon, and we went from hotel room to hotel room, and each one had a different affiliate, and they'd have us do promos for the Waltons. So those types of things and other sort of parades and telethons and things would come up that we'd end up doing on weekends. So John decided that he wasn't going to have time to study classical music and go to a conservatory. So he went back to playing guitar, which he figured he could take with him to the set and practice every day. And he did. He said, never given up on that, but was sort of in the background a little bit. So just went back to that, back to guitar, which was his first love. And here is a question John was asked that I frequently get asked as well, and I imagine other members of the cast do. Did you have the opportunity to keep any artifacts from the show? And John said, I think the only thing that I have somewhere is probably the metal plate that was on my parking space. It says, Waltons cast John. And let me tell you, we had to fight for those parking spaces. And yes, we do, as well as having chairs on the set, which we eventually got with our names on them. He elaborates on the question about what was your first cool car or even your first car. This was a little bit embarrassing to answer in a way, but I will explain. So I guess it was the second. Well, at some point through the first season of the Waltons, I bought a car. I was 16. I became 17 during the filming of that season. I had my driver's license and I decided I was going to buy, and this was one of the bottom line models, but I bought a Mercedes diesel. Now that sounds like a very posh move. I guess it was, because it was probably about twice the cost of some other cars on the road at the time, because in 1973 you could buy a car for $2,500 or $3,700. I remember the Mercedes was about $7,000. Now this was not a real sporty model. This was a diesel, and it was 4-cylinder. It was baby blue. It was a very pretty car. I drove to work, and diesels have this sort of very distinctive sound. I drove on the lot to the back lot where we were filming, where we did all of our exterior scenes. So I drove in there and I pulled up and I saw somebody and they said, I think there's something wrong with your car. I kept that car for 27 years. That was the car I used to take Ellen Corby to awards ceremonies. Also in that podcast, he shared, we did seem like a real family because we had the good fortune to absolutely hit it off from the very beginning, from day one. I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you meet someone or a group of people and you instantly feel like you've always known them. That's what happened with this group of people, and it even happened on the homecoming. It was very much a family, and for the kids, the 6 of us, we were together more than we were with our own families, and this included events and promotional stuff, but also we'd just go out and do things together. We'd go out and eat pizza or go to a movie or go to a concert. So here he admits to eating pizza. So that other article might have not been entirely correct. I remember doing one time where the interviewer asked me if I ate breakfast. And at that point I said, no, I don't. And in the article it said, Judy always eats breakfast. She thinks it's the most important meal of the day. So you never quite know. I think she used a lot of her own viewpoints and put them as if they came out of my mouth. So you can't always trust. But this theoretically is transcribed from the actual interview with John. So I'm going to take this as more accurate. And then he goes on to talk about Elton John coming to visit the set, which I've talked about, and that he regrets not taking the opportunity to discuss music with him, but he didn't want it to just seem like a fan and bother him about his career on his day off during his visit to the Waltons. And I know what he means, and sometimes when I meet different celebrities and stars, I kind of feel like I don't want to seem like I'm just being a fan, and I never quite know the best thing to say, and whether they would appreciate hearing, hey, I really love your work, or whether that is the cue to them to sort of, oh, this is a fan, I'm going to tune out. So I find it awkward, as many of you may, when you meet somebody that you really admire. So we're all kind of human in that regard, I think. He was asked, what is your favorite guitar that you own? And he says there are 2 or 3 that kind of fit that description, but probably the first and foremost one is an electric Gibson 345 that I got new when I was 9. This is also the guitar that my parents skimped and saved to buy because they realized how hard I was working, and that was their way of being supportive. I hope you enjoyed this little overview, particularly of John and his music, but also some of his earlier life and some things that he had to say and some things that were said about him and, his growing up and his love of music. So please join me in wishing John a very happy birthday. And I will see you next time for more behind the scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.